Om. 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 Sahana vavatu. Sahano bhunaktu. Sahaviryam karavavahai. Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Maya Saktamanah Partha Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yathajñāsyasi Tatshṛunu Jnanam Teham Savijnanam Idam Vakshamya Sheshatah Yajñātvā Neha Bhūyonyat Jñātavyamavashishyate Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschidhyatati Siddhaye Yatataamapi Siddhanam Kaschinmam Veti Tattvataha Bhumirapo Nalo Vayuhu Yan Kham Mano Buddhirevacha Ahankara iti yamme Bhinna Prakrutirashtadha Apareyamitastvanyam Prakritim Vidhi Me Param Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho Yayedam Dharyate Jagat Etadhyonini Bhutani Sarvani Tyupadharaya Aham Kritsnasya Jagataha Prabhava Pralayasthatha Mattah Parataram Nanyat Kimchidasti Dhananjaya Mayi Sarvamidam Protam Sutre Manigana Iva Rasohamapsu Kaunteya Prabhasmi Shashi Suryayoho Pranava Sarva Vedeshu Shabdha Ke Paurusham Rushu Punyo Gandha Pruthivyam Cha Tejaschasmi Vibhavasau Jivanam Sarva Bhuteshu Tapaschasmi Tapasvishu Bijam Mam Sarva Bhutanam Vedhi Partha Sanatanam Buddhir Buddhimatamasmi Tejas Tejasvinamaham. Hari Om. Namaskaram to everyone. I suppose you all had a chance to look at the document that was shared earlier this morning, just to give you a broad picture, an overview as to the concepts which are going to be shared in verses 4, 5, and 6. Okay. Now, the concept which you all need to fundamentally understand is that the Brahman, which is the unknown truth or the reality, is always described in terms of Trinity. When we say Trinity, it refers to the three famous concepts. God is often described as Kshara, the perishable, Akshara, the imperishable, and the Uttama Purusha, which is nothing but the Supreme Being. Now, why is it described in that way? Perhaps to raise our limited understanding to the true grandeur, to the true magnitude of what the Brahman or God or reality is. In a simple term, in a layman's term, in fact, the Shastras also very poetically put it, they say the self is all pervading. Sarvatra, they say God is everywhere. Now, what is that concept of God is everywhere? Now, the fourth mantra, can we share the document, Gayatri Ma, please? Right. Now, verse 4 talks of Apara, which is also known as Kshara, which is lower. Verse 5 talks of Para, which is Akshara, which is the higher. And the sixth verse talks about the Uttama Purusha. The Uttama Purusha is known as the Supreme Being, which is beyond the Para and the Apara. Now, this is the concept of Trinity. The concept of Trinity is Kshara, Akshara, Uttama Purusha. Now, in the fourth verse, if you remember, it stated that the Panchabhutas, which is space, air, fire, water, earth, they form gross elements and subtle elements. Now, the subtle elements, when they combine to form what is known as subtle matter, which constitutes of the mind, intellect, and ego. Whereas when the elements go through the process of Panchikarana, they become the gross elements, and when the gross elements combine together to form, they form gross matter, which constitutes of the physical body and inert objects. This is covered in the fourth mantra, and this gross and subtle matter is actually called as lower. That's how he starts off by saying in the fifth mantra. The fifth verse, he says, this is lower, but different from it is the higher nature. Now, what is the higher nature? Now, firstly, there's a new term we are using. The gross and subtle matter, which is the lower, is known as Jada Prakriti. It is matter. And then there is something known as the Jiva Prakriti. It is when the consciousness functions through the gross and subtle matter. That which functions through the gross and subtle matter, that is the life-giving element, is the higher. And that life-giving element is known as Jiva Prakriti. So there is the Jada Prakriti, which consists of matter, which is gross and subtle. And then there is the life-giving element, which functions through the Jada, is known as the Jiva. So there is the Jada Prakriti, and then there is the Jiva Prakriti. So in simple terms, Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is the higher, which is covered in the 5th verse. Prakriti is the lower, which is covered in the 4th verse. When Purusha, the life-giving element, plus the Prakriti matter come together, there is an expression of life. And wherever there is an expression of life, for example, an individual is known as conditioned consciousness. Another term for this individual where the expression of life is known as conditioned consciousness. Now, what is conditioned consciousness, which we call it in brief CC? Conditioned consciousness is the individuality that is created by the BMI and the ego. And how is it created? When the consciousness operates through them, when the pure consciousness conditioned by the BMI, it creates life, which is the conditioned consciousness, which is a Jiva, the individual. Thanks, Ma. We'll come back again to sharing. I just want to know whether you are all able to make rational sense of what was presented. Hariji.
Guruji, can you show that picture, the first diagram?
Gayatri Ma? Yes, sir.
See, the 5 elements which you have shown, space, air, fire, water, and earth. And one is subtle element combined. Yeah, okay. And it becomes subtle matter. And I think the Panchikarana should come before the gross elements. These 5 subtle elements undergo Panchikarana, and then they become gross elements. And the gross elements combine and make gross matter. The Panchikarana, I think it should come before the gross elements. The Tanmatras, they undergo Panchikarana, and then they become gross elements.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to put it in a form of order. I'm just mentioning what the gross elements form. The gross elements form the gross matter when that process is known as Panchikarana. There's no, it's not a strict order. I'm just mentioning the concept here.
Okay.
Hmm?
Okay. Okay.
Is that okay, Ji?
Yeah, it's okay.
Hmm?
I thought
The
that
con-
you have given gross elements undergo, the subtle element undergo panchikarana, and then they become gross elements. And they combine and then become gross matter.
Yes. It is just to mention the concept.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we okay to say that? Say that.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, Venkatramji.
Hari Om Guruji.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I just wanted to understand. So normally all of us as human beings, we are normally in Jada Prakriti, and Jada to Jiva is a journey which, we go through. I mean, most of us, the Jada Prakriti is basically, what you spoke about, body, mind, intellect, ego, and all the air, water, and all. So Jada to Jiva is a journey which one has to go through. Is that right? Because
Where did you get the idea that the journey from Jada to Jiva is a spiritual journey?
no, I'm just trying to, because you said Jada Prakriti is what is the combination of the subtle and the gross elements, which is there with us. Now, the Jiva is something all of us have to go through the journey to become, what it is. That is what I was actually comprehending from that sheet. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No. See, if I don't think that's the concept. Gayatri,
Okay.
share the second sheet, please. Sir, as I mentioned in the beginning, that God is always described. I think there's a spelling error, disregard that, described in the form of Trinity. Now, what is the Trinity? Akshara, which is the Jada, Akshara is the Jiva, Uttama Purusha is the supreme being. That supreme being is beyond Jada and Jiva. Now you are saying the journey is from Jada to Jiva. Why are you limiting it to Jiva?
Okay. No, because in the first document, yeah. The page,
Okay.
can you,
Go to the first document.
So this Jada Prakriti and then Jiva Prakriti, which is higher. So I was basically kind of, probably my interpretation then was wrong, because the conditioned consciousness is there in Jiva Prakriti, whereas Jada is basically what is the combination of gross and subtle. I was trying to interpret it. Yeah.
No, but if you see in the beginning of this sheet, the fourth verse talks of lower, the fifth verse talks of the higher, which is the Jiva, and the sixth verse talks of the Uttama Purusha, which is the real concept of what that God, Brahman, or reality is.
Okay.
So therefore my clarification is, why should I limit myself to Jiva, which is in fact the same thing, but we should try to expand our understanding to the absolute.
Okay.
Isn't it, sir?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Yes, Hariji.
Guruji, I have a doubt. This Kshara is finite, and the Akshara is the Kshara is superimposed on the Akshara. So can we consider Akshara also is finite? Did I make myself clear?
Yes, yes. The question you're asking is, Kshara is the world which is perishable.
Yeah.
The Akshara, which is the imperishable, which is superimposed.
On which Kshara is superimposed.
Upon the Kshara is superimposed.
Simple. Since Kshara is finite, so the Akshara also becomes finite. There is no Akshara without Kshara.
It's like saying you have superimposed the perishable water under the imperishable desert. Now the question is, sir, does the water which is imaginary and perishable, does it soil the sand in the desert? There is no water there. There is no water at all for it to soil the desert. The desert is the imperishable, which is a substratum upon which you have projected an imaginary, illusory mirage. What is being projected on the imperishable is an imaginary illusion. So also the perishable world is an imaginary illusion. In fact, contrary to what you're saying, the world which is being imposed on Brahman borrows the characteristics of Brahman onto it. What is the characteristics of the world? It's not finite. It is time, space, causation. What is time? Eternal. Space, all-pervading. Causation, infinite. So the characteristics of Brahman are projected onto the characteristics of the world. The characteristics of the world are not projected onto the Brahman. It's the other way around. You borrow the characteristics of the rope onto the snake. You don't impose the characteristics of the imaginary snake onto the rope. It's the other way around always.
How?
I pity the entire group. Out of the context, I don't know how many of them are following.
No, it is this doubt I am having since long time. If I got a chance to talk about it, then how do we differentiate between Akshara and Uttama Purusha?
That is where the whole explanation is. If you can just wait for the little explanation, you should be able to get that clarified.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the whole. Thanks, Hariji. It will clarify, and if there's still anything left to be clarified, you're always free to clarify. Okay. Now the whole concept of Kshara, Akshara, Uttama Purusha. First, they pointed out the unknown truth through the known terms. This is the principle of education. The Shastras never violated the principle of education. The principle of education is to describe the unknown through the known. Now, when the student went up to the Guru and asked, what is that unknown truth? They immediately pointed to the world. They said, whatever you see is God. Now, what they saw is the plant, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom, the flora and the fauna around them. And thereafter, they naturally attributed the nature of the world, which is perishable, to God. Are you all with me? The simple question the student asks the master, where is God? What is God? To which they said, whatever you see is God. Ignorantly, the student attributes the perishable nature of the world to God. To which the master immediately clarifies and says, no, it's not what you see is God. What you see is perishable. That which supports the perishable, there is an imperishable platform. That is God. All that is seen is perishable, and all that is seen is supported by the unseen truth or the reality. And that unseen truth or the reality is Brahman, is God, they say. Now, when that was said, what is the possible limitation in the understanding of the student. What the student would have done is he would have limited the God to the pervasiveness of the world. To correct that, they just said God is beyond it. So rather than saying God is everywhere, they just brought out the concept of Trinity. I just want to ensure you all have understood what I've said in as simple a term as I've put it. As simple a term. I want someone to faithfully repeat what I said. Don't go off track. Who will volunteer just to repeat what I said in 3 simple points? I've said it. If you don't volunteer, you have no choice if I ask you. So better raise of hand here. By switching off camera doesn't mean I'll not pull you up. So you can't hide here now. Sitaramji, tell me, sir.
I must confess I'm lost. I mean, that's the opening batting.
Okay.
I mean,
right,
it's
no
a very
problem.
difficult concept. I mean,
No, it is. My job here is to make you all
I know.
understand. Please don't misunderstand it, but
Yeah,
let
I have
me
no issue with
get
that.
to it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Let me get somebody else. Who is Ushama? Have you followed?
Namaste, Guruji. I understood, but I'll not be able to express in clear terms.
All right, no problem. Sedramanji.
You want me to Hari Om Guruji?
Hari Om, sir.
You want me to tell the entire thing what you told or the last?
Only the last element of the concept of Trinity.
Yeah. See, the student asked, is God perishable? Because it was told,
Where is God?
Where is God? It was told God is everywhere. Then since everywhere plants and everything do perish, the student asks, is God perishable? It is not. It is not, because imperishable platform supporting perishable is God. That's what I explained. Then unseen truth is Brahman or God. God is beyond it. To explain God everywhere, they brought the concept of Trinity. There is something beyond what we see, and that is reality, that is Brahman. To explain that, since there is a creation, destruction, and sustenance, they created this Trinity to further explain.
That's why I said don't bring in new concepts. You're bringing in the concept of creation, maintenance, destruction. That is not the Trinity we're talking about here. The Trinity we're talking about is Kshara, Akshara, Uttama Purusha. Now you have done you've captured it, sir. I would say you've fairly captured it. But just to drive home the shortcomings in every state, in every stage, when the student asked, where is God? What was the master's answer, Seduji? Whatever you see is God. Now, thereafter, the student would have interpreted the teacher's answer. He perceived the world of things and beings. he attributed the perishable nature of things and beings to God. Are we right?
Yeah.
So in order to correct the wrong understanding of the student, the master interferes and says, no, 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 no. What you are seeing is the perceivable world of things and beings which are perishable, but there is an imperishable element which supports the perishable world. So the perishable world is Kshara, the imperishable world is Akshara. So the student got a lift from the understanding of God as perishable. He was lifted to the concept of imperishable. All right, fair enough. The student has understood that second step, that God is imperishable. The world can go through the change of name and form, but the God is the formless. God is changeless. Very good. But then why did they have to introduce the third element of Uttama Purusha? Is the question. Even Hariji was asking, why did they have to introduce?
Attributeless.
No, the same attributeless is even imperishable. Ramji.
Namaste, Guruji.
Namaskar, sir.
Well, this is the toughest lesson so far, so I'm just trying to digest it. But so Akshara to Akshara, I understood very clearly. Akshara to Uttama Purusha, you said God is beyond the unseen truth, which is the imperishable one. But why did he say that? That point I didn't catch. Because what is it that the student said after hearing Akshara, or after hearing that the unseen truth which is imperishable? What did the student ask? I didn't catch that question.
There is a possible limitation in the understanding of a student, and in order to correct it and to give it a lift, there was the third interpretation or third aspect element introduced.
Yeah.
What was that third?
Because,
what was the shortcoming of Akshara?
shortcoming of Akshara, yeah. No, I didn't get it.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right. Padminima is, she's, Ramji, I can see Padminima when I look at her now, what I can recall? 100-meter sprint, you can relate, no? The 100-meter sprint, these sprinters are preparing for Olympic final 100-meter sprint. What will be the energy of these fellows? They are 2 minutes away from the pistol
Glory.
being shot.
Yeah.
No, for the race to start.
For the race to start,
They are full of excitement and energy, jumping, and they're putting their foot on, what do you call that, boards, no? They're kneeling down. They're just waiting for the springboard, waiting for the trigger. And the Madri Padmanima is down. You look at her answer. Before the pistol is heard, she would finish the 100-meter race.
I don't know whether I am how close I am to the answer, but what I understood, you said like after clearing the first question, the student thinks it is the akshara, that is unperishable, supporting. Yeah. So then the student feels, oh, it is the all-pervading universe that is supporting all this. So then finally Guru says, no, it is not that, it is something beyond that. So something beyond that imperishable or all-supporting universe, all-pervading universe. That is it. So suddenly what I came to my mind is that Kenupishat term, like Anyadeva Vididar, it is something beyond that. It's not what you know. It's something beyond that. something which you cannot experience in your present form. It is more inexplainable or Anyateva, that is something like that, no? That when you explain that, you said it is not what you know. It is different from what you know, and it is beyond what you know. So here also, when it is explained in simple terms as it is God is everywhere. So naturally, the student will try to understand whatever I see around is God. All the living things and non-living things around me. But then I try to qualify God as this. Then I am corrected by the guru that no, it is not that. Supporting all these things, there is something which is unperishable. All these things, whatever you see around is perishable. They are not going to stay for long. So there is a substratum which is supporting all this perishable thing, and that is unperishable. Then I think of all the what is supporting the universe, that is all pervading universe. Then he says, no, it is not that. It is something beyond that. I may be right, I may be wrong, but this is how I captured it.
For the sweetness with which you explain, I'll give 100 marks. But for the concept, I don't know how many of them understood. I'll give you 50 marks. No. See, the shortcoming of the understanding of the student when the master introduces the concept of the imperishable, and if he were to conclude with the second concept and say God is the imperishable in the perishable, the student would have limited the pervasiveness of God only to the parameters of the world. You would have limited God only to the pervasiveness of the matter. Now I ask you, what is your understanding of matter? Harijit, what is your understanding of matter?
Possibly you would say that which is perceivable, that which is finite, that which is...
What is it?
It's the body, the beings, objects.
Can you compartmentalize matter? Then I will extend the pervasiveness of the imperishable into that. What is your definition of the world or matter? Is it just the planet Earth? Is it matter? Is that the world?
It would be beyond that. But it is
how far?
Being, yeah, I mean, every time you think that there is a boundary, there are people who do research and they find a further boundary.
Correct. So what was the understanding of the limitation of the world 50 years or 100 years ago? And what is the parameters of the boundary with the powerful telescopes they're able to explore into the Milky Way, the galaxies and the unseen stars, which are far, far bigger than our existing system? They're creating, they're still naming, as we are talking, there are studies being done and naming these systems that are existing out there. So the very definition and the pervasiveness of the world is constantly increasing, isn't it? And what is the nature of that pervasive? Sorry, what is the nature of that world? It is perishable, isn't it? Then he says that which pervades the perishable world is the imperishable God. But then you are limiting God only to where there is matter. Just to tell you God is not an intellectual concept, God is beyond the intellect. Just to tell you God is beyond the limitations of your intellect, he introduces the concept of Uttama Purusha. And Gayatri Ma, can you share the second document, please? And I want to make sure that statement was captured. I don't know how many of you read it, how many of you had captured it. Hariji, read the last sentence.
Uttama Purusha can't be captured by the BMI.
So it is beyond the body, it is beyond the mind, it is beyond the intellect. Your intellect can conceive the world, your intellect can conceive the imperishable in the perishable world. Can it not? But the intellect cannot conceive Uttama Purusha. Just to tell the student that God is not a figment of your intellectual imagination, he introduces the concept of Uttama Purusha. Just to tell you that you can't capture it in the ideas. That is the whole purpose of introducing Uttama Purusha. Otherwise, you can say, oh, God is imperishable. In a concept, you can say that which permeates the perishable world. And you can limit there. Just to tell you it is beyond the intellect, he introduces that and says it's beyond it. So the moment you think you've understood it, he says it's not it. Anyat, anyadevatat viditadato aviditadadhi iti shushruma purvesham yenastadvyacha chakshire. This is the mantra Padmini Ma is referring to. Anyat, it's other than what you know. It is beyond the unknown. That's the Upanishadic language. I'll not get into that. But for now, I'll just go with what the fifth mantra is saying. Okay? Yeah, Sitaramji.
Guruji, you know, as a seeker, this puts me in a very, or I mean, let me talk of myself, puts me in a very out on a limb. And what is being said is that what is seen is not what God is. Something else which supports that is also not God. But God is something which your senses cannot fathom or appreciate. Then, I mean, so you're saying that I cannot see with my faculties God or experience it. So that means I have no way of reaching that level in any case. So it's in a way a pointless exercise. In the sense, it's only a fate. It's only fate.
No.
Okay, look, there is something there which you cannot perceive, and stops at that. It still leaves you with the question as to I have not understood it at all.
No. You know what I would conclude? What you're saying, right? Logic, wrong conclusion. The conclusion is wrong. That doesn't mean
that only.
That doesn't mean no, not at all. Now, what is the conclusion of that argument? If you go back to the Kena Upanishad, the Kena Upanishad says God is not an object of perception, emotion, and thought.
Fine.
God is that which enlivens your perception, which enables you to perceive, enables you to feel, enables you to think. So don't bring down the God from a grand stance to a mere object of perception, emotion, thought. You can say God is something tangible I can see, is something, an emotion I can feel, or an idea I can exchange. Don't bring down God to that level. It is not an object, it is the very subject that enlivens.
No,
it is the very electricity behind every gadget.
No, that bit I understand, Guruji. But the thing is to say that my faculties and perception cannot fathom God.
Why?
I mean, that's what is being said.
Why can it not? Because it is the very subject, it is not an object. That is the conclusion. That should be the conclusion. That doesn't mean you cannot attain that state of godliness, or it's meant or left to fate. That is not what is being intended in that argument. That's where I'm trying to clarify it further. We can't conclude that. It only says, as I said, it establishes two things. One is that it establishes the grandeur of what God is. You can't bring down God to a name and a form, to a statue and say, this is God. It's just a symbol, it's just an idol. This is not God. It's just a representation of what that truth is. That is what I said. God, what is the definition of God? Sarvatra. All pervading. Now, what does all pervading mean? Something which is formless. Now, can your intellect conceive what is formless? That itself explains it. I don't even have to go to the Trinity. Trinity is just complicating matters to ask me further. But if you understand what all pervading, your intellect itself can't understand all pervading. So what are we nodding head to? I don't understand what all pervading means. I don't understand anything attributeless means. I can't relate to formless. So yet I understand what formless. I don't understand what I understand. My intellect cannot capture it. So that is, if you go into the hair splitting analysis, that is what they're saying, exactly the same thing. So let us not intellectualize, because by intellectualizing, it only tells the limitation. What it only trying to establish is the true grandeur, the true nature of Brahman. Yeah. But they're only going it in a methodic way, step by step. So that I don't get stuck up to anything in particular.
Yeah. It's like saying that, there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, there are unknown unknowns. The last bit. Unknown unknowns. There is something which is there, which we don't know.
Which you'll only know upon realization.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Guruji.
All right. Yes. Yes, Siddharamanji.
Guruji, enlightened person will definitely understand and appreciate, and he will self-realize soul. He will not have these questions. If we can answer this question, then there is no need for self-realization. Already we are all enlightened. If we can.
No, do you mean to say to that extent I have not answered it?
No, I'm just saying. I'm
Sitaramji.
Question. I'm just saying. See, we are all in the process. At our current levels, we just cannot even visualize, and we have to accept it. And we have to go on evolving. And once we are evolved, this question doesn't arise, because we see Brahman everywhere, and we love every object, and we'll become divine. So,
correct. See, you are describing the expression of that attainment. Once you attain that state, how does that identification with Brahman express? As we learned in the text yesterday in the Upanishad, he says, you are able to have that pure love and identification. No, you're right. That is the personalization of that experience.
A good amount on Ramana Maharishi, I am able to relate.
Right.
Now and then he does express, in the sense, in a different, we have to grasp it, but there are no questions about it.
No, there's no doubt about it. Undeniable. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes. Yes, Gopalakrishnan ji.
Namaskar, Guruji.
Namaskar.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. See, I just want to put it in the words I understand, the understanding of the God. So instead of saying, I reach God, I realize God, I attain God, I've seen God and all that. So one word I want to use is the continuous consciousness of presence of God. It's a consciousness, just consciousness. Okay. So just to explain a little bit on that, in terms of matter. Now we all know we have bodies, and we have cells and atoms and electrons and all that. Now electrons have got tremendous amount of energy. Where is that energy coming from? And you have billions and billions of electrons in every body, every small body. Okay, then each electron has got so much of energy. Where is that energy coming from? So that energy is there in the living beings and non-living beings on the earth. It is among that energy is there, that electrons and the energy behind electrons is there in the universe, in all the planets and stars. And is also without matter, that energy is there in the universe. So this is what I call it, that energy is driving each one's thinking, perceiving, talking, behaving, everything in the human life. And also not only human life, every life on the earth. And every moment in the universe is happening because of that energy, which is flowing continuously, never static. Now, that is the energy. I understand this as a, we call it as a God. So just being consciousness of the movement of energy, being an independent observer of that movement of energy around us, is what I feel as a consciousness of the God. More continuous we are there in the consciousness, more so-called realization it is. That is my understanding. So I don't know, does it make any sense, or am I wrong in my understanding?
No, no. In fact, you are very correct in saying that to be conscious of the consciousness is said to be the reality. To be conscious of it, that which is responsible for everything to happen around. In order to be conscious, you need to be extremely objective. You need to be very highly introverted. And when you are in that state, you're constantly attuning. Right now, when I'm talking, I can focus my attention on what I'm talking, or you can focus your attention on what you're listening, or I can focus my attention on what is it that enables me to speak. You all can switch your attention to what is it that is enabling me to hear. Most of you are not even attentively listening. That is second matter. But those who are trying to listen and make sense is an attempt to go beyond that. Correct, Gayatri Ma? Some of you who are listening can attempt it. Those of you not listening came to this level of try to listen attentively and make sense of it. So step by step, I am there with you from the very beginning till the end step. But Gopalakrishnan, this is what it is. If you're able to switch, go backwards, than getting caught up in what is perceived, if you go step back and back and back, that is what the Kenopanishad is saying. Shrotrasya shrotram, manaso manoyat vacho havacha gusa upranasya pranaha. It is the eye of the eye. It is the ear of the ear. It is the mind's mind. So it is to be conscious of the consciousness is what succinctly, beautifully you have captured and said, yes, that is exactly, that should be the focus. Where should it be? That's where it should be. And one who does that is, in fact, very highly spiritually established, because he's not caught up in all the happenings. You know, he's not caught up in the perception. He's not caught up in the world. He's objective. He becomes a sakshi. It's like there are one or two people in this classroom, or more than that, who are just quietly observing the entire transaction of his knowledge, isn't it? They are just being a witness. It's possible that we are caught up in the words. There are people, someone out there who's just observing quietly what's happening. That is the stance we must take, sir. So be conscious of the consciousness. Right, sir?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Yes, sir. Pinky Ma. What took so long? What took so long?
I was just unmuting myself.
No, not this one. I mean, what took so long to raise your hand and say?
I raised it long ago, but I was in queue.
That itself was too late for me. That's why I'm asking.
Because I was just running along to keep pace with as you were talking. I was.
Yeah, Harishi will agree with me. Correct, Harishi?
What will
let
he
me get.
That
No,
I
no,
took
that's right.
too long, or that I was running, or I took too long?
You took too long to raise your hand.
Oh, Baba Re, then I better stop doing it. I think I got the message.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm just, not my usual self,
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I
Kuchi
had one, just a small clarification. So Uttam Purush, is
Yeah.
that equal to Brahman? Uttam Purush, can we say another name is Brahman, pure consciousness, reality, and self-realized soul, all are the same? Because when we say we are self-realized means I can't say I know Brahman, because then it becomes a subject-object relationship, right? So there is the Brahman is the subject and livener. When I'm self-realized, what happens? I attain that state of being pure consciousness. Is that the same as Uttam Purusha, or is that even beyond the self-realized soul?
Okay. In order to get an answer from someone, I'll have to make the question simple for them.
Thank you.
The question, Tinkima, you're asking, please clarify if that's the question. The question is, in all these three, what is Brahman? Is Brahman the Uttama Purusha?
Yeah.
Is the question? All right,
Yes.
that's the question. That's the question. Now,
Also, if Brahman and Uttam Purusha is Uttam Purusha, then who is the self-realized person?
we will come to that.
Okay.
We will see. By then, there will be one or two people attain realization. Then we'll get to them. First, let's get the question answered. What is Brahman first? Badriji. He is the only Sakshi amongst us. So he is the only person who is eligible to answer the question.
Ram Guruji.
Namaskar, sir.
Actually, I tried to raise my hand a couple of times, but you rightly ignored me. Okay.
Oh, did you? Sorry, I didn't even notice it. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Because
now you're reading my mind also. I got to be a little careful now.
No, some of the things I wanted to say, others have said, so nothing is lost. Okay.
Right. But if I could request you to just answer to the question from what we have clarified in the Trinity. The question is, what is Brahman? Can you clarify this first, please, sir?
Yes. See, Uttama Purusha is a description in words. So Brahman cannot be captured in words. So it is ultimately in the words, in the realm of thoughts, intellect, even consciousness. There is you're bound by your ability to express what you want to say. Now Brahman is beyond all that. So this Tinkima's question belongs actually into the transcendental realm. So you have taught us before that the final stage of self-realization is when you go from the world of experience to a transcendental stage, and that is indescribable, and even Uttam Purusha will not do justice to that. So it is something that need not be discussed because it cannot be discussed. We can only stop at Uttama Purusha and say that that is an approximation to what we conceive intellectually as Brahman. But to go beyond that, the question of whether a self-realized person is identically equal to Brahman is something that we cannot even discuss and answer because it belongs into the transcendental realm. Where it's this shloka that we recite, the Purnamada Purnamidam, that I think correctly captures that. Because there is no, once you reach the stage there, that particular Upanishadic shloka seems to be saying that there is no such thing called this is bigger, that is smaller. Everything is, so a self-realized soul, whether such a person in the transcendental realm is equal to Brahman is something we cannot answer at all.
No. You're just going off track here. Now, when you say Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. Now, what does it mean? That is whole. This is whole. Take out whole from whole. What remains is whole.
Whole, correct. Yeah.
Now, come back to the question. Tinkima is asking, in the three, what is Brahman?
In the three, everything is Brahman. But
That's all I want.
the unknowable aspect of Brahman is what is captured in Uttam Purusha. That is my
Badriji,
understanding.
you have, and that is what I wanted. In the entire explanation, I wanted everything is Brahman. That's what I was looking at answer from you. You got it. You said it. The explanation, what you've given is an embellishment. The real piece of cake is this. The question is, what is Brahman? In Kshara, Akshara, Uttama Purusha, what is Brahman? Everything is Brahman. But when can you see everything is Brahman? As you rightly said, only when you reach the transcendental state of self-realization. Such a person will see God in everything, isn't it?
Yes.
God, he sees God in everything. He sees God is beyond the known and also into the unknown.
Right.
What is known to you? Thank you, Badriji. Rajima, what is known to you? What are the three states known to you?
The dream, the
What
way,
are the three states of consciousness, which is
wake, dream, and deep sleep.
Jagrata,
Jagrata,
Swapna, Sushupti. You know the waking state of consciousness. You know the dream state of consciousness. You know the deep sleep state of consciousness. Do you know the Turiya, the fourth state? So God is beyond the known, which is the waking, dream, deep sleep. Also the unknown, which is the Turiya, the fourth. So when Tinkima asked the question, where is Brahman? Brahman is there in all the three. Everything is Brahman. So you can't say Brahman is just Uttama Purusha. No. Everything is God. All pervasive. But that experience comes only upon realization. And that state of Uttama Purusha is the state of self-realization. It is attainment of Brahman. It is the pure conscious state. It is that all-knowing state. These are all, again, descriptive terms in different contexts representing the one state. There is no hierarchy thereafter. There's only one state of realization of perfection. You call it Sthita Prajna, you call it self-realization, you call it moksha, whatever you call it. It's all the same God-realized state. Transcendental experience, everything is same. Look at the amount of effort they have put in to explain the inexplicable reality. And yet all they're trying to explain is that which cannot be captured by the intellect. Yet the amount of effort they have put in is staggering, is just staggering. Gayatri Ma, I would need that second document, please. Venkatramji.
Yes, Guruji.
You see the example one?
Yeah. Dream
Can you
and dream world
explain?
is
Can you explain what you understand from that?
Dream and dream world is Jada. Portion of mind supporting it is Jiva. Beyond that, which is the total mind, is Uttama Purusha. So, yeah. So basically it is the world which we live in, probably, you know, the dream world or the illusionary world is Jara, is what is being meant here.
What is the what is the nature of the dream and the dream world?
Nature in the sense like
what is the nature? Okay, in the same sheet, can you read what's point 1?
Kshara, perishable.
The nature
So
of
the dream
Jada
world
is
perishable.
correct. It lasts for a certain period of time. When you go to sleep tonight, you are the dreamer and you have created the dream world, isn't it?
Yes.
In the dream, you also completed marathon.
Yeah, no, not in dream. That is
No. One minute, Venkatramaji. In the waking state, you have completed a half marathon. In the dream, you have completed the marathon.
Okay.
Now the goal is to make that dream a reality. That is the waker's dream.
Okay.
But in the dream, the dreamer has imagined that he has won a gold medal for running 42 kilometers.
Okay.
Possible?
Yeah.
That dream is illusory. Now, what is it that supports the perishable? There is the imperishable. Now, what is the imperishable here?
Jiva.
What is it?
The mind which is supporting those thoughts or those dreams.
Whose mind?
Our mind.
What do you mean, our mind?
I mean, the individual's mind which is supporting that dream. Or
Who
those
is
thoughts.
who is this individual here?
I mean, I would say me or
who is this me? When you say me, what does that me mean?
Jiva?
No. Who is this Jiva? Who is this me? Whose mind is projecting the perishable world? So the dream is perishable, am I right?
Yes.
There is something that supports the dream, which is the imperishable, which is a Jiva, am I right?
Yes.
Now my question is, whose mind is projecting that dream?
The Brahman?
Yo. Where did Brahman come into the picture, sir? Just an example. Whose mind is projecting the dream? Who is Venkatraman? Venkatraman is the waker.
Okay.
It is the waker's mind that projects the dream. I intentionally didn't write the word waker's mind so that I can engage you all here in the class. So the portion of the waker's mind is supporting the dream. So when the dream which is perishable, it dies, does the waker's mind perish?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. So relatively, Venkatraman, his mind doesn't perish.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what's the third point?
This is beyond the total mind is Uttam Purusha.
Now, what is the total mind?
Which is both the perishable plus imperishable?
No.
Or it is the supreme being? I mean, yeah, you have to explain.
Yes.
What is the total?
Yes. Thank you, Gayatri Maha. We'll come back to this chart again, this diagram again. But what is the total mind here? Can anybody clarify? Can anybody help Venkatramanji to understand what is the total mind? Srinivas Reddy Garu. Total mind, sir. Don't tell me I have no mind at all in Japakandi Mira.
Guruji, Pranam Guruji. The moment your notes is leaked, then we understood we are out of mind. We are trying to get into that. No, Guruji, I could not comprehend that. I could able to understand the perishable and imperishable, but not the total mind. This total mind is
the total mind, sir. when you go to dream, you have a certain, dream is said to be a vomiting of certain undigested thoughts. Venkatamji, the dream is said to be a vomiting of certain undigested thoughts. Now, whose undigested thoughts? The waker's undigested thoughts. So there are certain thoughts of the waker that are not fulfilled, that are expressed as dream. It is just a vent. It doesn't exhaust the underlying unfulfilled desires of the waker. It's not that, okay, I have a desire to travel to Europe and I've dreamt of a holiday in Europe. My desire to see Europe is exhausted. Not possible. I repeat, I have a desire to see Europe and I've dreamt of having a holiday in Europe. That doesn't exhaust my desire of seeing Europe. What do you understand, Reddy Garu, with that example?
That means that your desires are not exhausted, means it's not realized it.
They are not exhausted, they are not realized through dream.
Through dream.
They can't be satisfied through dream. Dream is only a vent. So unfulfilled desires, because of COVID, you couldn't travel for the past 1.5 years. And you had everything planned, you have the resources, you had the time, the family was willing, you could take time out, but because of this COVID, you couldn't travel. So the desire to travel and see Europe is unfulfilled. So what happens? You dream of seeing Europe. So the dream is perishable. The desire for, so the entire dream you had was only 2 weeks holiday in Europe. Venkatramji, following? The Jada is the dream of having a 2-week holiday in Europe. And that is perishable. The imperishable is the desire to see Europe. That is the part of the waker's mind which supported the dream. Are we right?
Yes.
Now I ask you, is that all that Venkatraman's mind has? Rajima, get back Venkatramanji. Venkatramanji, can you unmute yourself, sir, please? Now I ask you, sir, is that all there in Venkatraman's mind? Example is the desire to see Europe.
No,
Is
there
that
might
all
be many
there?
other. No, there might be many other things.
What do you mean might be?
No, there.
Are you doubt?
There are.
There is.
There
Please
is.
be certain. At least there be certain, sir. That is your mind. You should know it. Huh?
Yeah, there are many other things which are there running in the mind.
There are many things. How many desires do you have? Can you quantify your desires?
Infinite.
That is what is the total mind, which is the Uttama Purusha. So the dream is perishable. That portion of the dream which is supported by the waker's mind is imperishable. Beyond the perishable and the imperishable is the Uttama Purusha, which is the total mind. It is impossible to understand without an example. Even the example it fits in perfectly if you understand it. Because the mind of the waker is too vast. It's not that the entire waker's mind was there in the dream. Only a small portion was enough to project the dream, which I took an example of holiday in Europe. Does it help?
Yes.
Great. Now, The second example, Gayatri Ma, please. I'll come to Ramji's question, sir. Ramji, please be a little patient. I'll come to you before we conclude. Now, the second example is the sunlight on the wall. Let's say the entire wall is lit with sunlight. Okay. The entire wall is lit with sunlight. That is Jada. And then let's say I take a reflective object. Let's say I take a piece of a mirror. And when the sun rays fall on that, there is a spot reflected on the wall. So I am playing with that reflection of light on the wall. That portion of the spotlight or the wall which is being with the spotlight which is reflecting is Jiva. And the real sunlight is beyond the light which is lit on the wall, which is reflecting through this particular mirror. The real sunlight is everywhere, isn't it? All over. The entire planet, the entire hemisphere is lit with light. It is the grandeur of the true sun, which is the Uttama Purusha, the Jada, the Jiva, and the Uttama Purusha. Same thing is brought out in Christianity. The Kshara is the sun. Hello. The Kshara is the sun. The Akshara is the Holy Ghost. The Uttama Purusha is the Father in the heaven. The same concept is brought out in Christianity as well. The Son, the Holy Ghost, and the Father in the heaven. Now go back to the previous page 1. Now, the one thing you need to note is what creates life element is Purusha and Prakriti. And that's what I wrote in Sanskrit, Ardhanarishwara. What is that Ardhanarishwara? Rajima, what is that?
It's represented by half man, half woman, Guruji. Ardhanarishwara.
What does it mean?
Shiva and Shakti.
Shiva represents the consciousness and Parvati represents the Purusha, and
Parvati represents the
Prakriti, which is matter. So Purusha plus Prakriti equals life. That's the symbolic representation of the philosophy we are learning here. That's a symbol, the idol. Okay, so keep a hold of this document. When I wanted to present these verses to you, I said, how do I present it? So I had to capture these ideas so that it becomes easier, handy for you to all to fall back on. So it was not certainly easy to put it out, but it took a while, but it will be very helpful for you to fall back on. Otherwise, it's very difficult to communicate. One is the platform we are using is virtual. It's so difficult to, I would have ideally used, I would draw diagrams and connect with you. You know, that's a different ball game altogether, but hopefully soon we'll get to that hybrid version where we'll be able to hold physical classes as well. But this is the idea. Okay. Yeah, Ramji, I think I'll take your question and then perhaps we can conclude with that.
Guruji, my question was that we are conditioned from the childhood on many physical descriptions or imaginations of gods and idols, and then the Puranas, and because for us it is it has gone into the subconscious of the mind. Does it prevent us from thinking of the formless, I would say formless form of the Supreme Being? And we get caught in these idols and then these rituals and then these celebrations and things like that. Is that correct? That's what I wanted to ask you.
What is correct, sir?
Whether these things are restricting us from thinking of the bigger, of the bigger Supreme Being that we are talking about, who is formless and who has start and end.
In the 12th chapter, Arjuna asks a similar question like this: am I to worship God with a form, or am I to worship God without a form? Arjuna asks this question. You know what answer he got?
Mm-hmm.
Can you guess? Can you guess?
No.
Sir, only two things is there, sir. Adila periya and a difficulty. Guess only, no?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
No, please guess of the two,
guess,
which is
guess. I
guess.
think you see the formless through the form, or you try to imagine and then.
Arjuna is asking, am I to worship God with a form, without a form? Straightforward answer. Upanishad master mari answer kudukuringa ninga.
Well, worshipping is always with form, but I think imagination is always without form. What is worship, sir? Worship means, in our language, worship means you do all the, you pray, you do all the things.
Sir, if you want me to make it in the context, maybe I have not used the right words. Am I to attune to God with a form or without a form?
Ideally without a form.
The answer which Krishna gives to Arjuna, he says, obviously with a form, he says.
With the form, he says.
Oh, he says, with the form. And why he says that? Why he says that is, knowledge must always be calibrated to the requirement of the student. But that can't be taken as a universal principle and applied across board. And that is what has happened. Through Shastras, through Puranas, it has become a Sanatana Dharma. It is not a Sanatana Dharma. There's a difference between Sanatana Dharma and a Matam. A Matam is an opinion. And throughout the Gita, Krishna himself says many a time, Arjuna, this is my opinion, he says. So you can't even take what the Lord says in the Gita as eternal truth. Eternal truth means it must be applicable to everybody across the board, isn't it?
Yeah.
The law of gravity applies to me, to you, to any human, any being out there in the world, any object. That is eternal principle. But when he says, worship God with a form, it may not be applicable to me and you. It may be applicable to a few of them or to the vast of them. There could be people who could worship or attune to God without a form. There are people. Therefore, there is no standard thing that should I worship or approach God with a form, without a form. But yet, it all starts with a form and graduates into a formless reality. So, does it occupy our minds and restrict our ability to think of the ultimate reality? It is what you make of it. Even now, when I said Ardha Narishwara, the picture of half of Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati, when they are together, symbolizes the union of Purusha and Prakriti. So when I see that idol, that portrait, that picture, I'm reminded of the principle. I'm not caught up in the idol. So an idol only represents the ideal. Now, so when one lacks this higher wisdom, this greater knowledge, invariably one gets caught up in the mere shell. One gets caught up in the mere ritual, the mere symbol. So the knowledge, when it backs the practice, it adds a greater relevance and a purpose. And it also helps you, the knowledge also helps you not to get attached to the practice itself. Two things: it represents you of what is beyond it. It protects you from not getting attached to what you're practicing. But these gods and goddesses, these rituals are an integral part of our sadhana, so that they help us evolve, but it's not to look down on them, it is to use them for our own evolution. So,
but I think that realization needs a little bit of education and a little bit of, I mean, because we are going through this course, we appreciate that point.
Correct.
If we had not gone, for example, if I had not gone through these lectures, probably I would not have understood that. So, but 99.5% of the people in the world don't understand it because they don't have the benefit of
access. They don't have access to this wisdom.
Yeah.
Therefore, if you ask me what is that, you can't even imagine the amount of fervor, the energy, the enthusiasm I have to ensure this knowledge reaches beyond the boundaries we are still confined to. I don't want this knowledge to limit to a handful of you all. It should serve one and all. So to create a vehicle and a platform so that it reaches, so that this knowledge which should enlighten, is it not right to think that way? Why should we limit it to just a few of us? It should reach and enlighten. So everybody who is in this journey, invariably they are in their own ways practicing it. But if this knowledge can just give a lift, may not be lift them right up to the realization, but just give them a lift to beyond where they are and lead them further, rather than just getting caught up in what they're practicing. But the knowledge has got enough wisdom to take you right up to moksha, realization. So you can't say this is right or wrong. It's how you approach it. Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hari Om. It is with God's grace and all our sincere prayers and efforts, we are happy to share that any donation to Wisdom Foundation are now ATG exempt. We appeal to all seekers to generously donate. Your offerings will help further the cause greatly. Namaskaram. Over to you, Guruji, for the Shanti Mantra.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.